This episode is brought to you by IT Pro TV, binge-worthy learning for IT teams. Why is it binge-worthy? It's learning presented in an engaging and entertaining talk show format that beats voice-over PowerPoint snooze fests. IT Pro TV offers an on-demand course library with more than 3,300 hours of content. Watch on your desktop, on the go, or in the comfort of your own living room. IT Pro TV is IT training you and your team actually want to watch, which means a better return on your learning investment. Get started with IT Pro TV for Teams with a special offer for Security Weekly listeners. Visit itpro.tv/Security Weekly to start a 7-day free trial and get 30% off a standard or premium IT Pro TV membership using the code SW30. Endgame automates the hunt for both known and never-before-seen adversaries in enterprise networks. Built on unique knowledge on the adversary's tools, techniques, and tactics, Endgame's centrally managed agent prevents, detects, and responds to advanced adversaries in the earliest stages of the kill chain without prior knowledge. Endgame, automate the hunt.
Welcome, everyone, back to Paul Security Weekly. If you work in IT and want to have access to an awesome library of on-demand training, head over to itpro.tv/Security Weekly. They are now accepting requests for demos for their IT team solution. If you want all of your coworkers to have access to an on-demand library of over 3,300 hours of content, complete with transcriptions, make sure you visit itpro.tv/Security Weekly. You will be satisfied to steal a line from a local car dealership that I'm friendly with. How about that? Also, Mark and I are really hungry at this point. Like, I wish we had pizza. I was actually just craving pizza. There has been no food because nothing has been open. Mark and I got to work today. We're like, we made it. And then we're like, what are we going to do for food? And we called every local place around, and nothing is open. And then we're like, the bakery across the street was open. We're like, yeah, we can find something better than the bakery. And then they closed. And then so we had...
Now the bakery's looking pretty good.
Yeah, the bakery was... It was like 3 o'clock, and we're like, yeah, the bakery closed like around 11 a.m. Like, that probably would have been good to go get a spinach pie. We missed that boat. And so Mark and I got creative. We raided the cigar lounge next door. Thankfully, I was able to gain access to that briefly. I got some pretzels and peanuts. That was... I guess you'd call that lunch. There was a holiday basket that we raided for caramel-covered popcorn, which that got eaten as well. And then dinner, I think we'd call that dinner, Mark. I'm not sure, was edamame. And there was edamame in the freezer.
Where the hell? So it was in the freezer.
There was a bag of pre-shelled edamame in the freezer. And we were like, okay, it's either ice cream or edamame. Let's start with the edamame. And so we heated that up in the microwave, and we each had a gigantic bowl of edamame, which, I mean, it's protein. It's good.
I ate some... Now be careful. I hope you chewed them well, because tomorrow if you fart, you could shoot the dog.
That's true. That's true. And they are beans. They are beans. So thankfully, it's just Mark and I here in the studio. And then I ate some olives, I think, earlier. That was good. There's some celery. There's celery. We were going to make Bloody Marys. That was my thing with the celery. Like, we have celery. Mark's like, celery is just water. I'm like, well, maybe we just need to have a Bloody Mary with the celery. And then we realized we had everything to make Bloody Marys except for tomato juice, which is kind of a critical component. I guess we could have just put vodka. There's really no substitute for tomato juice.
No, you have to have the tomato juice, man.
So yeah, there's celery and peanut butter. Then yeah, so we've been kind of that's how we hack the eating here in Security Weekly Studios. It's been an interesting day. John Strand is here with us to talk about our technical segment this evening, which is really about wiping your logs.
It is about wiping your logs.
And speaking of which, the other thing that Mark and I did, because we were had the entire studio at our disposal. There wasn't much to eat, but we also have a full bar. Just an important point. And so I decided that some extra toilet paper needed to go to some good usage, and wrapped monitor, mouse, keyboard, and chair of one of our other employees in toilet paper for good measure.
That's all.
3 chairs, monitor, mouse, and keyboard with toilet paper for one of our employees, because that's just how we roll here at Security.
I feel really bad for Sam now. Poor Sam.
Yeah,
it actually wasn't Sam. We picked on Sam last time. It's actually John, one of our other production engineers, that will have a little present when he gets back into the office. We rotate our kind of office shenanigans around.
There's not a steaming present in the chair, is there?
There may or may not be some creative usages of said substances in the studio to represent what may or may not be number 2.
We don't,
Okay,
we don't have food,
didn't
but we
happen.
have plastic poo.
That's right. We do. We don't have food, but we can replicate poo
Poo.
here in the studio. It was all about hacking. All about hacking today. All about hacking.
You know,
All right.
really-
So should we continue with the wiping theme?
Yeah, let's go. Let's do some wiping.
We should probably let John talk. Yeah.
So I like to, like in the past, long time ago, I like to do videos that are video tech segments so people can see me actually doing the walkthrough of the video and the tech segment. But in this situation, I did that, but I wanted to open up to a bigger conversation. So recently, Shadow Brokers, they released some code that was used by the NSA that actually showed that the NSA had the capability of actually wiping logs and editing logs on Windows computer systems. Now, we'll talk a little bit later on why this is a big deal and why this matters. But it turns out that some type of log editing has been around for a long time in Mimikatz. This goes all the way back to 2011. Was the first time that Benjamin actually had this capability built into Mimikatz, and Mimikatz version 1, I think. He had the capability for NT5 and NT6 based operating systems, which is modern Windows computer systems, by and large. Now, the way it works is you have to do the privilege debug. It's privilege : debug, and then you run event : and then you can do clear or drop. Now, what's interesting is whenever you do the drop, every single event log that goes into the security event logging service is actually going to be stopped from that point on. It's just going to shut it down. In particular, I think it's 1102 is the event ID that actually says that the event logs have been cleared. And the reason why that matters is because on Windows, if you're a bad guy, you break into a system and you clear the event log, you're going to see an event log generated that says that the event log has been cleared, which is a dead giveaway that something bad has happened. But once you actually put in the drop, event : drop, after you get privilege debug, it doesn't log that event anymore. So you can sit there and you can clear the event log to your heart's content, and there's going to be no record that you actually cleared the event log short of a huge gap in the event logging service. You're going to see a time frame where there are no event logs in play. Now, this becomes a game changer, I think, in the world of information security. And it's weird. I didn't know about this for a long time. In fact, the blog post that Ben put out on the on his Gentle Kiwi blog for Mimikatz, it has no comments on it. And he just recently tweeted out that, hey, Mimikatz has this capability and has had this capability since 2011, which is interesting because a lot of people, myself included, mistakenly said that the Shadow Broker breach and the event logging capabilities that the NSA had was the first time we actually saw something like this, and that's just not true. This has been in Mimikatz for a long time under our noses. And the reason why I wanted to put this out is this has amazing repercussions for information security professionals because of so much of what we do is based on event logs. A lot of the different endpoint security products and a lot of the SIMs out there are receiving event logs and generating events and then giving alerts and telling you what's happening. And this, in my opinion, I think it really calls into question a lot of these products and how much we can actually trust them in and of themselves. Basically, you have to have multiple different overlapping areas of defensive security, not just event log security, but having network forensics and maybe user behavioral analytics and something that's looking for these types of logs. But I think it's important. You can sit and you can play with this at work. You can run Mimikatz on your systems and basically demonstrate it and say, oh my God, yeah, we can clear event logs. And the other thing that's cool about it is it actually stops that event log from being written. So it's not like it's going into the disk and then wiping it after the fact. It's basically stopping it from being written in the first place. So I wanted to open this up to the people that are on the panel tonight to kind of kick off this conversation. What do you guys think of, we're talking about event logging and the ability to actually manipulate event logs. Does this impact? Does this not impact? Larry and Joff, I'd like to talk about, is this something we should be doing in the realm of network penetration testing as far as like doing threat emulation? How does this actually play into our field as a whole?
So John, my big one that I think it really depends on the level of sophistication and maturity of their security program of the customer.
Mhm.
There are going to be customers that we're doing testing for that we don't need to clear event logs because they're not going to see it.
True.
so that's true. Some other ones, we clear event logs and they will see it. The fact that we're not putting stuff in the event logs, they may also see. The other challenge also becomes, and John, my question to you would be, if you're doing that on some of the local workstations, are all the local workstations in those environments logging to a central source where, in fact, this might get noticed or might get missed?
And that's an interesting question because you're right. It's a small percentage of customers actually have that. One of the things I've been talking about, and you and I have had this conversation as well, for InGuardians and Black Hills Information Security, we tend to get the pointy end of the spear for a lot of organizations. If an organization is listening to Security Weekly, if they've attended a SANS class, they tend to be a little bit more ahead of the curve on the security scale. So yes, we do see organizations that are actually monitoring their event logs all the way down to the workstation level. That does happen. It is rarer than organizations that aren't monitoring anything at all. And the kind of where this question goes when you're talking about a certain level of customer is, let's talk about the MITRE ATT&CK framework, because we just can't talk about that enough. I think in 2017, that was probably the single biggest thing in computer security, developing a framework of all the different types of attack techniques that we see attackers using, and then having something like the Atomic Red Team framework by Red Canary and Sub-T working on that, bringing that to the front. And the reason why I think BHIS is going to start testing these types of things more often is organizations should be able to detect that type of activity. Not necessarily doing it necessarily to hide and persist and be super stealthy, but testing it and saying, hey, this is something your organization detected, or saying your organization did not detect this and some corrective controls need to be put in place.
Hey, so I'd like to jump in and make a comment, John.
Hello. Hey. Oh, sorry, Joff. Just a question first that John and I were talking about before the show. I'm an attacker. I've gained access to a system. I'm employing these techniques. Have I already left a trace on disk for the event logs, or can I employ techniques that you talk about in this technical segment, John, that can intercept any suspicious logs before they get written to disk? I feel like the writing to disk is the kind of indicator and real kind of sticking point for people being able to identify what I'm doing.
And that's actually something I recommend in this video at the end of it. One of the things you can do is not just rely on just the event logs, but actually utilize Sysmon. Swift on security scripts for tuning and modifying Sysmon to actually see what's happening. Now, that's not event log centric per se, but it's actually getting another view of your computer system that you'd be able to see more or less real time what is actually happening. And there are a lot of tools out there that are actually using some heavily modified Sysmon configurations. In addition to that, we have some utilities Derek released at DerbyCon last year that were actually some neat filters for Sysmon as well for detecting potentially malicious activity. So yes, there are other ways to actually see that type of activity hit a box before the event logs are actually written. So yes, you can absolutely detect it, but if your sole way of actually detecting things is the event logging service, this shows that there's an ability to put an injunction, kind of a block on the event log service so it doesn't get written to the event log service. Not a matter of it being written to disk, it just doesn't get written, period.
And that, so your initial exploitation, does that leave logs or no?
Well, possibly. It depends on how the exploit works. The Spectre thing that we're talking about a little bit later on, God only knows.
Mm-hmm.
And it also talks to the it talks to the value of offloading your logs to a third party, not necessarily a third party service, but out of the system in which normal, network behavior might take place. So that way you have a way in which you can go back and review those logs for events that have taken place. Because if someone is in your systems and they've now got a point where they can actually prevent logging taking place from anything that they're doing going forward, that means they can go back and clean the logs that they might have otherwise left if it's stored local.
I want to bring up a segment that we did earlier in the year in 2017, where I talked to Lior Frankel on Enterprise Security Weekly from Waterfall Security. Largely established themselves as one of probably the major player in the industrial control systems industry. What Lior was talking about earlier on in the year is they had adapted their technology such that if logs were written to disk or being written, they could send those off through a gateway, through a system that is a one-way system. And it's a physical hardware one-way system. If logs are coming out, they pass through the system,
one-way diode,
right? Yeah, and it's like a actual, what you said, John, like a fiber optic, like one way in the hardware. Data can literally only pass from point A to point B. It can't come back out, and it can't be modified after the fact. That caught the attention of a lot of, I think, CISOs and a lot of security architects that were looking for that style of solution that said, when you're under attack from advanced attackers, they are in fact doing the techniques that John is talking about. If you could somehow write those to a system that's a write once, separate from the network, it can only go in, it can't come out, that's very useful. I thought it was one of the more interesting segments we did in 2017, and I hope it gains traction and is a topic that we're talking about given the, all of the things that happen, basically shenanigans with logs.
Can I make a quick comment,
Yeah,
Paul?
go ahead, Joff.
So one of the things, it's really weird when you get a picture of me, I see like half Jack, half me. But anyway, one of the things I find myself doing as a pen tester, and I'm really trying to work on this, is have a module of some sort that assesses the maturity level of the customer based on a certain set of controls that are either turned on or turned off as the first step that I exercise inside that environment. So something I started putting together today was just a series of registry key queries that said, is script logging enabled? Is module logging enabled? Is Windows Event Forwarding enabled? So that I could actually then not make the assumption necessarily that the customer was lame. And I'll be honest, I tended to make that assumption that the customer didn't have those controls enabled. But John made the point very clearly that what tends to happen with Black Hills and certainly in Guardians and many of the other consultancies is we end up getting the pointy end of the spear, and we're getting very sophisticated customers that do have this stuff enabled. So in order to sort of audit the maturity level of the customer coming in at the beginning actually is advantageous to us before we start further testing, so we get a sense of what trail we're going to leave at all before even having to potentially disable or clear logs and so forth.
No, I really like that job for a lot of reasons. It's almost, I hate to put the label of artificial intelligence, right? But it's kind of artificial intelligence light to say, I'm going to get a foothold. And the only thing I'm going to do is just query a bunch of settings, and based on that query, kind of make a decision as to the maturity level of the security of the organization to then plan my next attack. And I really like that as a strategy. I think it's valid.
On the logs, I like the data diode idea. It's better than what we used to do, which was you'd push logs off to your logging system, whatever that was, and then you would push those off to an offline backup system. You'd connect, pull them off. But one thing that needs to be thrown out there is that at every step, at every box that hosts those logs, they need to be hashed, and those hashes need to be protected so that you can say, oh, look, they screwed with this one and this one, but not that one. You need to be able to trust the integrity. The hash that was taken on July 17th is not the hash that you found today doing your incident response.
Right.
Is really important information. And that needs to be protected, more than the logs themselves, I would argue. But, this is tricky. Logging is tricky to do well. It's critical, but, I'm sure some listeners have been in the situation I was once, where I didn't take network timestamp seriously and logging seriously many decades ago. And I learned when we couldn't prosecute somebody because my logs sucked. And then I started becoming one of those obnoxious old beardy logging pedantic bastards. And NTP bastards at the same time, too.
Yeah. Wow.
Time rocks. I'm right there with you, Jack. We should kick it back to John, don't you think, to talk some more?
Yeah, John, summarize this for us as we move on to the news next.
So moving on to the news, I think that Two things came out of this. Number one, it's always really cool in this industry whenever you get old and crusty, where you're surprised and you completely missed something that happened 6-7 years ago. So that was really, really, really cool. But the fundamental challenge is we still come back to, you can't trust just one source for security analytics. You can't just trust event logs. You can't just trust network data. You've got to have multiple different overlapping ways of looking at the same problem. That concept of visibility and having situational awareness is what's going to improve security, not an individual product or an individual source of information from that product.
And in some ways, it's also having the presence of a log versus the absence of a log. You have to know what's normal versus not normal in your environment, which is probably the hardest thing that anyone could do, because who knows if you've already been breached or not. So maybe normal to you is not actual normal.
Well, we're certainly not normal. John, thank you very much for insights into this topic. Check out wiki.securityweekly.com to get the full video and the technical segment. With that, we're going to take a short break, come back, and talk about the news for this week. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.